Hi, this is Dustin Hobbs at the California Mortgage Bankers Association, and welcome to Connect, our monthly podcast featuring interviews with movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. As you know, we're doing a sort of an expanded version of our usual monthly podcast. We're doing a weekly podcast here while everyone is sort of stuck at home and working from home and trying to, work through the social distancing and the challenges we're all facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So hope you're all staying safe and healthy. But we've got we've actually got two people we're going to interview today. And I'm really excited to hear what they've got to say. It's sort of a passion of mine, marketing and branding. It's something that I'm very interested in as well. So I'm really excited to see, sort of what their thoughts are on where we're at in the industry and where we're going forward. So let me introduce our two guests first. First, John Seroka. John is principal at Seroka Brand Development. John's also co-chair of our own mortgage technology and marketing committee. John's been really involved with the association for many years now, and sort of a fixture at our Mortgage Innovators Conference, and also again the MTAM committee, and he's been instrumental in its success. So John's got a lot of good insight on the industry. We're also excited to have Scott Seroka. Scott is Chief Brand Strategist at Seroka Brand Development, and he sort of is going to give us the insights on what he's seeing from some clients and some other folks in the industry about branding efforts, sort of what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and we'll get into all that here in a second. So, but first, I'm really curious. This is actually, I had this down on my notes to ask you, John, but I think I want to hear from both of you on this. So what's your backstory? How did you guys get into the, what interested you in specifically the branding side of the industry? I mean, obviously there's so many different aspects to mortgage banking and real estate finance, but I'm curious, what drew you guys into the marketing side of the business, and what's kept you in there for as long as you've been in there? So maybe, John, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, sure. It goes back a little while. I'll start out with, I went to Marquette University, and shortly after I graduated, Dustin, I had a discussion with my father about what I was going to do with my life now that I had this fabulous degree in my hands, right? So he recognized that I really thrived in sales type positions, and we started talking about real estate and the mortgage industry. He told me straight out that I'd make a great mortgage loan originator. And I had no idea what he was talking about at that time. Had no idea what that was. So anyway, after he explained it to me and explained what a mortgage loan originator does, how they make money, what's involved, the work ethic that's involved, and all of that, I thought to myself, wow, this is a very serious career. This is an actual career that I could really embrace. And I mean, this isn't like my past jobs where I was, like selling windows or selling stereo equipment at Best Buy or something like that. I mean, this was dealing with real estate. So he introduced me to a client of his that talked to me about the business. And shortly after that, I just got to work. I worked with a broker. They were fantastic. They assigned a mentor to me. She taught me a lot about the business, how to earn respect from real estate agents and get them to want to work with me and respect me. I mean, I would go home at night, I'd be studying Fannie and Freddie guidelines in the evenings. I'd be learning about guidelines for various portfolio products, and then I'd be giving presentations at real estate offices, and pretty soon I was killing it. I mean, I was winning top producer awards, and I was doing really well. I was loving it. So I started getting, really good at forming relationships, and realized that the way to a real estate agent's heart was by bringing them leads. So I would leverage marketing avenues to FSBOs, for sale by owners, and form relationships with them. And upon gaining their trust, I could lay the groundwork for them to be able to talk to an agent that could refer me business, to a top producing agent of somebody I had a relationship with, or was working to develop a relationship with. And many of these FSBOs, they weren't very successful, and they didn't understand the role of a real estate agent. and they were tripping over dollars to save pennies and giving themselves unnecessary headaches. Then I'd work with the agent in their open houses, help them with throwing some pretty amazing brokers opens, not quite at the level of $1 million listing brokers opens, but still pretty amazing. And seeing my success, eventually my father suggested that maybe I would like to help him build the family business. And seriously, at that time I hadn't even thought about that. I was just so focused on my own career and my trajectory and just working so hard that I really didn't even think about that. But then understanding more about what he did, it actually came very natural to me because he specialized in working with mortgage lenders, and I had a great understanding of the industry at this point. So I understood how mortgage companies make money, not just brokers, but the lenders themselves. I understood the grind. I thought I was going to become a broker eventually, but so actually that combined with my understanding of marketing turned out to be really a perfect match. So that's the backstory.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. You sort of went the route with the starting on the origination side, learned the whole business, and then came to the marketing side.
Exactly.
Scott, how about you? How'd you wind up on the marketing end of the business?
Well, I've been with the company for about 22 years. I graduated from college and I had some jobs, miscellaneous jobs. I managed the credit union for about 2.5 years. And, one day it was just seemed to be the right time where, again, my father approached me and asked me if I would be interested in becoming a part of the family business. And after a lot of consideration and thought, I decided to make the jump. And I was a production manager for a while. I wore many different hats within the agency trying to find my space because I was just interested in it, but I just needed to find where I fit the most. And we were getting some clients who were talking more and more, not so much about the branding, but the marketing rather, but more about the branding. And we came to the conclusion over time that there's a lot of brilliant marketers out there, but they really don't necessarily understand the significance and impact of what brand is and what it means to the organization. So I personally began to really study and research branding into great depths to really understand what makes some companies great, why do companies fail, how to motivate your team to become a better organization. And I got into the many moving parts and many mechanics of what it meant to own and live a great brand. And that has become my second religion and my passion. And that is where I choose to focus my efforts exclusively is I understand the marketing, I understand the PR, but not to the depths of, a couple of our people, but on the brand side, that is something that I love to do more than anything else, probably on earth right now, also helping companies develop really good cultures. I was in leadership effectiveness training. This has been a very personal journey for me, not so much corporate. People want to know if you were making tons of money wasn't an issue, what would you do? This is what I would be doing all day, every day. So whenever I have a new opportunity to help a company out, build a better brand, a stronger brand, I'm all over it and very passionate about that course.
That's really cool, Scott. I love hearing that. That's you're actually doing what you would dream to do. Like you said, if money was no object, you'd still be doing it. That's really cool. So, question for you, John. Obviously, we're right in the midst of all the. The daily headlines are as negative as it gets right now with the pandemic and the uncertainty in the business community. I'm curious. You talk to your clients and prospects every day. What's your sense? Are they, more pessimistic, more optimistic? I know we had a few weeks ago, there was a lot of concern, an acute concern about the margin call issue that sort of put everyone sort of on a knife's edge. And we're, it seems past that. But do you sense that we're sort of in a more optimistic mode now, or is it still kind of wait and see?
I will tell you, Dustin, look, everybody realizes that there's trouble ahead, no question about it. The economy is going to open up in phases. Social distancing is going to stick for a while, and that's going to create problems for the food, entertainment, travel industries, and owners, entrepreneurs. They're working in the red as they renegotiate leases, and then commercial property owners are going to be left dealing with that and kind of holding the bag. Airlines won't be operating at capacity. Conferences attendance, that's going to be compromised. So you can look at just about every industry through this lens, and it's easy to see how the real estate industry is going to be affected, because there's only so much the government and employers can do to keep people in their jobs and ultimately keep people in their homes, right? I mean, what's happening now, it's a big transformation of how we as a society are interacting and going about business. There will be many jobs that are never going to come back again, because even if we were completely open for business, entrepreneurs have learned how to adapt their operations. Sorry about that.
No problem.
They've learned to adapt their operations to function in a way that may not require rehiring of many people. But look, now is a time to reinvent yourself. And how do you do this? You know, simply focus on what you can control. You can't control a virus. You can't control a terrorist attack or a flood or any other act of God. You have to, you have to just control the controllables and control how you react to these various issues. So really take stock of yourself and what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and turn it into something that people will actually pay you for. We've learned a lot going through this. We were thrust into an environment, Dustin, where we had to figure a lot of things out very quickly. A lot of innovation has taken place, and frankly, it was all innovation that was going to happen at some point anyway, but this whole pandemic thing just really sped everything up. And I think that I think that it's a positive thing.
Do you think that,
Well,
do you
I don't
see
want
any
to.
similarities
I
as
don't think
far as
pandemic is a positive
sort of
thing, but I think that the fact
yeah.
that this innovation is positive.
Yeah. Do you see any similarities as far as the optimism, pessimism split between now and the financial crisis in 2007-8? I mean, you were around for that. You had clients back that went through that back then. What was your sense as far as, you know, back then? Was there more, in a sense, despair about the next 6 months than we're at now? I mean, that's sort of the sense I'm getting, but I'm curious, is that what you're hearing too?
I hear a little bit of that, but look, I mean, you can't really compare the two. It's two totally different things. It's a different situation.
Yeah, I think almost because we had that, it's only been, 10 plus years. There's a lot of people that are in the industry right now that went through that. And I get the sense that there's a lot of, this too shall pass. We'll get through this. We'll be all right. Just talking to some of our member CEOs and presidents, that's sort of the sense I get.
Right. I agree. It's true. It's absolutely true. It will pass. Well, obviously it's going to pass.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, I remember back in 07-08, there was always, you talk to some people sometimes, and there was a sense that I don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. Are we going to be, will there be a real estate economy and a mortgage market? So
right.
It's good to hear. I think that I feel the same way, that it's, people are more optimistic these days about even the near term, I think, as far as things opening up and where we're going to be at here in maybe 6 months or 12 months.
We came into this with a really strong economy, the housing industry strong. So look, you know what? Like I said, control the controllables. That's the way you have to move through issues like this, is that you can't control all of these external things. You can only control how you handle it and how you deal with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Also
So Scott, I'm curious here, looking sort of maybe outside the industry, where do you see brands and companies that are doing things right and doing things wrong, and maybe why are they doing those things wrong? And I'm just curious to sort of get the perspective outside our industry.
I think that any brand that is living its mission and purpose, Simon Sinek had his book Why. So if you're living your why, those companies are really successful. And those who understand their why can bear any how. And I'm just a big believer in that. And just touching on the previous subject, I think that any brand that thinks about how they can adapt to a crisis, how they can adapt to opportunities, I think are going to survive. So I think it's very important to do that. You know, if you read just about any branding book, you hear Southwest, Zappos, Amazon, Apple, Ritz-Carlton, John Deere, Costco. I mean, they're leading their categories, and they're doing it for a reason. It's not because of a sequence of really good decisions made at the top. It really has absolutely everything to do with leadership, their purpose, and making sure that everybody in the organization embraces it and believes in the brand. So if you take Ritz-Carlton, for example, their brand is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That has been their brand for so long, and they live it. They empower their people to live it. They encourage it. They incentivize it. They do everything in their power to make sure that their guests are treated with absolute royalty, no matter what. And their employees, I understand, are given a budget every month to do special things, kind of like the Disney way. So there's a lot of great hotels out there, and not to knock any of them, but when you think of pure luxury, Ritz-Carlton is typically number one. I think Four Seasons is up there too. So it's really living the mission and purpose. I'll give you an example. I mean, if you were to, BMW for a long time had the tagline ultimate driving machine. And, I guess any car company could adopt that, but BMW knew how to live that brand. And if you were to take one for a test drive and maybe it was a little bit loose in the corners, or maybe if the acceleration was a little off, or maybe the door didn't slam, with solid confidence. Well, it's not really an ultimate driving machine. It's just, another car, but you pay a premium for certain brands because you are willing to pay for the quality and the level of service. So to answer your question, I think that brands that are going to succeed no matter what are brands that understand their why, understand their purpose, and they will do whatever it takes to live it, because that's what separates a company that has a brand and a company that just states something that sounds nice, but they kind of live it okay, but not all the time.
Right. Sort of it's either an empty promise or one that you're actually fulfilling with your culture. Yeah. So next question, again for you, Scott. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are as far as the differences, and I mean, maybe this is strategic or maybe even philosophical or tactical. What's the difference between building a brand and then maintaining that brand?
Building a brand is, I'll define that as the process of identifying your distinctions that make a noteworthy and positive difference in the lives of your customers and clients. If you do that very, very well, and if you know how to differentiate your brand very well, you will be very, very successful. And one thing that I tell all my clients is that, okay, so we've had our day of discovery, we've had a lot of discussions, and here's your unique value propositions. And on paper, they really don't look very exciting anymore. They really don't. But when you talk about maintaining and living the brand, it has to do with, okay, so let's take a simple one, for example. So a company says we're easy to do business with. So I'll challenge the company, I'll challenge the leadership in each of the key departments. How can you in your individual department improve things so that you can be even easier to do business with than you are today? And we create a culture of people, and I start what I call a movement, where people become very engaged and very excited in thinking of ideas about, well, can we improve our process? Can we improve our systems? Can we improve our communication? Can we improve our operations? Can we streamline things? So when you put a challenge out to a group of people with a lot of enthusiasm and say, this is our brand, we need to do even better at it, because it's easy to say we're easy to do business with, but it's a lot harder to actually live that and mean it. So therein lies the distinction. So whatever your value propositions are, learn how to live those value propositions. Put something behind them. So What does it mean to be caring? What does it mean that we have great communication? What does it mean that we have great client service? It doesn't mean anything to people unless you put some substance behind it and people actually live it and they experience it. And what do you earn by that? Referrals, recommendations, great word of mouth marketing. You become, you build a reputation of being a great place to work. You build a reputation of really taking care of your clients and customers, which is what they really value the most.
Yeah. You know, to dovetail a little bit off of that, if I may, Dustin.
Sure.
For lenders especially, it's challenging, okay, to stand out, because you really can't do that based on product or technology, at least not in a sustainable way, because even if you're ahead for a second in either of those areas, they're going to catch up to you really, really quick. So this is a common thing, actually, and it's happened to me not too long ago, and more than once. So I was talking with the CEO of a mortgage company, and they were struggling with developing awareness and trying to stand out, which is a pretty common problem. This particular CEO, he was looking to hire LOs that could bring great local referral relationships with them, and as he stated, in return for one of the best compensation packages in the industry. So I asked him, why should these LOs come to work for you besides the compensation? And he talked about things like fast closings. He talked about they do, you know, everything for the customer, emphasizing their great service. Talked about quick response times, their technology platforms, pretty much everything that you would expect to hear from every lender, right? So he wasn't saying anything different than anybody else. But what I never hear about in these conversations, Dustin, is I never hear about things like community involvement, great training or mentorship programs, success stories about how anyone has advanced their careers within this company as a result of the programs in place, or as a result of their great culture, what they do to make their company great to work for, and why they are respected or admired in the community or amongst their peers. And an interesting study by Glassdoor, actually, one of the most striking things that they found was that across all income levels, the top predictor of workplace satisfaction is not pay, but it's the culture and the values of the organization. And that's followed up pretty quickly by senior leadership and career opportunities at the company. So you really have to have a good handle, as Scott was saying, on your USPs, your unique selling points, your key messages, in the essence of your brand.
Yeah. Well, and you know, back to culture there, and I you know, completely agree with you guys that culture is so key to building the brand, not only just within the internal, but your external, you know, face of the company. That's, you know, influenced so much by the culture of the company. And I don't know which one of you wants to take this, but I'm curious to know, you know, do you guys see, when you see sort of the degradation of a brand, is it most often because of a culture issue or something else? I have to imagine it's mostly culture, but I'm just curious what you guys are seeing.
I think it has a large part to do with the quality of the leadership. When you see a brand that's lost its way, well, maybe it never really had a mission and purpose. Maybe it never went through the process of identifying why do we exist. And I think that is absolutely critical to survive in such a highly competitive and oversaturated industry, which happens to be quite a few different industries right now. But you have to be able to understand, you have to be able to answer the question, why exactly should people do business with us versus all the other options they have available? And when we engage prospective clients, you know, into that question, you know, well, what are your value propositions? Well, unfortunately, for the most part, they kind of look and sound the same as everybody else. And that's where we need to come in and help them go through that process. And the why do you exist is very critical as well. The employees need to have a strong leader with a strong vision, who leads with conviction, who leads with purpose. And the employees need to believe in the direction. The employees need to embrace the brand, and they need to know why they're doing what they're doing, why they come to work every single day. And when that starts getting softer gray, or when they don't hear from leadership as much anymore, and when things are going a little bit haywire and they don't understand why, that tends to be a large issue. We had a client not too long ago where we did what's called a brand and culture insight assessment. And instead of, the last question is, if you would like to discuss your answers to this questionnaire, please give us your name, and best way to contact you, either email or phone or however you'd like to contact. The CEO delegated that conversation to somebody 2 titles removed from him. In other words, the CEO, not reachable. I'm not talking to you. And it's only a company of about 1,000 employees, which it's big, but it's not that big, where you really can't talk to 14 people who really want to talk to you about, the culture survey. I think that's an issue. So I think you need clarity, and I think that you need strong leadership in all those different categories.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's interesting. I mean, that's definitely something you can't delegate from, the top, building your brand and creating those selling points and, your why. I totally agree. John, question for you.
I have to tell you that excuse me, Dustin, I was going to add to what Scott said real quickly, but that particular survey, Scott, remind me, I think that we got what, like a 12%? Was that the response we got after, like, it doesn't, we went to the entire staff I think like 3 times. Wow. And asked them to fill out that survey. Not us, but the CEO did, right, Scott?
Well, the CEO, when we did finally have a chance to speak with him on the phone, his reaction was that he just had some whiners. Okay, that's very telling. And that's that, I don't know if I can help you if that is your attitude and your position on people who they took the time to take your survey. They said they want to talk to you, and you're saying go talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yikes. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. John, give us sort of your philosophy on the difference and maybe the similarities and challenges, unique challenges for B2C and B2B marketing.
Sure. Well, first of all, we're all consumers, right? So it's always human to human, no matter what. So whether you're looking for a new car or looking to purchase a CRM, you want to be spoken to as an individual. You want whoever's marketing to you to understand what your needs are, what your pain points are, what's really important to you, and the problems that you need solved. And this is true whether you're sitting at your desk at work or sitting on your couch with your iPhone. Some of the similarities I would say between B2B and B2C marketing would be like, for one, you need to build trust. If you're going to do business, you need to build trust. Without trust, nothing else matters. That means that you have to place your customers ahead of profits. You have to create a positive impact in your community, and also listening to your customers. So another one, you have to be able to build a relationship with your buyer. And I don't mean a relationship where you like hang out together. I mean, let's not turn this into a weird thing. I mean, like a relationship in terms of the touch points with your company. So you want to make sure that you establish very high quality touch points, meaning every time your prospect sees an ad, a video, a blog post, infographic, article, every time they call your company or have interaction with your customer service representatives, all of these, they have to be very high quality contacts that build a positive image of your brand. Also, you've got to be able to solve a problem, but you have to prove that. How do you prove this? You do it through testimonials on your website. You have case studies, word of mouth. Also, star ratings on Facebook and Google, Yelp. Optimally, also optimally, would, you know, another similarity is the marketing philosophy. Okay, so optimally, whether you're a B2B or a B2C company, you should leverage omni-channel marketing alongside a multi-channel effort. So your audience is able to contact you through any channel that they wish. But, you know, just to be sure you understand the differences between the two, because they might sound very similar to a lot of people. Omni-channel really means that each channel used by any one individual works alongside the others and updates them. Okay, so that creates a unified message around the consumer. The consumer is at the center of an omni-channel marketing strategy. And that creates also relevancy. It's omni-channel is like a web, okay? Where multi-channel is different because it's more like an octopus, where you have the head and you have the tentacles of the octopus, and each tentacle represents another communication channel. And these channels don't communicate with each other or touch each other. Okay, so many companies, they start out with a multi-channel strategy because it's frankly it's easier to implement, cheaper to implement, but the goal needs to be omni-channel so that the consumer feels loved and they feel heard. Let me see. Another similarity would be post-sale or, you know, post-closing in our industry, right? Post-sale or post-closing communication really needs to happen so that you can continue to build loyalty. And that's especially important for lenders. It's especially important for lenders, and especially from a loan servicing standpoint as well, is to continue the relationship. Marketing and sales need to be aligned. That's another thing. Very important, no matter what industry you're in, where you are, they both need to be aligned. In fact, this is something that's very problematic in many organizations. The two departments work independently of each other, and then salespeople or originators, they spend time looking for content that doesn't exist, and then they land up creating their own content. And there's this recent stat that I read that sales and marketing alignment actually drives 208% more value from marketing. 208%. That's a lot. That's really significant. Also, you need to build buyer personas to be successful, because with them you can demonstrate to different people that you understand their needs and their concerns, and you can deliver the right message to them. And it goes back right back to what I said at the beginning. A lot of these like build off of trust, or all of these put together help you build trust. With B2B specifically, it's different, because now you're marketing to a group of decision makers. In a B2B setting, marketing can capture you know, your attention emotionally, kind of like in B2C, but there's going to be more of a drive towards logic behind the purchase because of what's at stake when the purchase is made. So, you know, when you think of B2C, B2C marketing can have more, it can have more of an emotional bent to it, because buyers tend to be looking for an emotional ROI. However, when it comes to big ticket items like what we're dealing with here, buying a home, considering options for financing, that emotional bent needs to be well balanced with logic, and well grounded in logic, and a lot of trust building to make it happen. So with B2B, you know, when you're selling a CRM or a POS technology or something like that, or any other products or services, you think more in terms of ROI, in terms of, you know, time to market, customer support, availability, and bottom line profitability. So, you know, some other differentiators I can think of, you know, real quickly would be like the sales cycle. For example, a B2B sales cycle, much longer, much more expensive. I think it's pretty obvious why, because you're you know, marketing to a group of people that are all playing a role in the decision. B2B content is typically more educational in nature, whereas B2C, it's more fun. But again, you're dealing with a high ticket item here. So it's more of a considered purchase. Therefore, it demands more of a focus on education as well. I mean, look, there's a difference between the way an investor buys a property, who's focused on cash return, right, versus a newly married couple.
Yeah, totally different market, totally different borrower profile. I know we've had this issue just in our advocacy efforts over the years since that I've been here. Is when you talk to state legislators, even they don't often understand at first the difference between those two consumers, the commercial real estate buyer and the residential, like you said, the newly married couple buying their first home. It's just a completely different market. I mean, the newly married couple, the lack of education between that and the commercial real estate buyer, I mean, it's night and day. It's apples and oranges. So that's really interesting, John. I appreciate that. There's a lot that I'm sure we could talk about. We could go on for another hour just on the differences between B2C and B2B. But I want to turn to Scott. I've got a question for you. So John talked a lot about trust and what goes into the marketing and the branding of whether again a B2C or B2B. But what if I'm starting let's say I'm starting a company from scratch, and I don't have that trust built in, I don't have any of that really built in. What would you say? What would be sort of the three key things, or just a couple of things that I should keep in mind, or tips to follow?
First thing you have to do is, if you're starting a company from scratch in this industry, you really have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? I could go to work for another company and I could become very, very wealthy and make a great living. I wouldn't have the stresses of being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, dealing with the culture and all the chaos and headaches that comes with owning and running a business. So you're starting a business because what are you offering that is better than or unique to the many companies that you are competing with? So what is your mission and what is your why? What is your purpose? That's the first thing you need to do, because that is, some people say, well, there's plenty of business to go around. Sure, sometimes there is, but sometimes there's not. So going back to my phrase of those who understand their why can bear any how. And I think that is incredibly critical to understand why you're doing it. That would be step number one. Step number two would be think through, and you have to do this, think through what will be your unique or just your value propositions. Being unique in this business is, I don't want to say impossible to do, but it can be extremely challenging. I'd rather an entrepreneur or business owner think of what are the top 2 or 3 things that I can do better than anybody else. What is your passion? What do you love to do? What can you motivate your people to do to make a difference? One example that I have is a company that built its brand completely around caring, and to my knowledge is doing very, very successful. And what we did is when we collectively came up with the brand, we did something called the brand validation, where we took that brand and the theme around the brand and we took it out to some stakeholders, some realtors and customers and what have you, from different perspectives. And what does that mean to you? What do you expect when you have a brand that is moving forward with this kind of a brand statement? Is it confusing to you? What does it mean to you? And if you weren't currently a customer or client of the brand, would you be motivated to do business with this company based on this kind of a brand? So that's a validation exercise we go through, which is a whole different topic. But I think that you need to think through your value propositions and how you will deliver them, because you are going up against some very successful companies and you need to figure out a way how you're going to stand out. The third thing, of course, is building your business plan. Whether it's a 1-pager or a 400-pager, build out the business plan and make it centered and focused on the brand and on your purpose. The reason people buy or don't buy, or they do business with or they they choose not to do business with is all based 100% on brand. Brand is everything that you do. It is the reason people buy or don't buy. It is central to everything that your company does, no matter what industry you are in. If you nail those three things, you are 95% of the way there. Now you just have to find the people who are going to want to work for you and who will embrace the brand and believe in your brand and will share the level of passion and determination that you have to make your company succeed. And I often say brand is 100% internal, because you have to have everything together internally before you even go outward with your marketing, which is the promotion of your brand messages.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's so crucial. And I've seen that just in my experience, seeing so many companies miss that part what you just said, Scott, that they don't have that, they don't have their own company, they don't have the ambassadors and the champions within their own staff ready to go, ready to deliver that message, and then they just, they fail because of that.
I'll give you a couple.
Yeah.
I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Two different companies, completely different companies. One of which is a leader who is very EQ driven. She runs a very successful company, has great people. Turnover is extremely low. She has a servant leadership mentality, very team oriented, and she has a knack. I mean, her brain is just wired for running a great organization where people love to come to work every day. They do their best, and even in the toughest of times, they muscle through with her. And again, very successful company. I also know a business owner who makes it very, very clear: I am not here to be your friend. We are not a family. We're not doing picnics. We don't get together for holidays. The only reason we are here is to kill our competitors. That is it. And if you want a work-life balance, if that doesn't fit with you, then you can go right now, because let's not waste each other's times. Unbelievably, they're both very successful. She hires a certain mindset. He hires a completely different mindset, and they're off going their own ways. So when you think of culture, when you think of purpose, it doesn't have to be soft and nicey, as a lot of people think culture has to do with that touchy-feely stuff. It can also be the more aggressive nature as well. But as long as whatever that is, you hire people who get it, and you hire people who share that frame of mind, if you will.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. I kind of thought you were going the other direction there, that one company with the, more aggressive mentality was going to be a failure. But that's interesting. As long as everyone's sort of on the same page and, buying into the culture, no matter what the culture is, you can be a success. Right. That's interesting. So maybe a final question here. We're going to run a little short on time here, but I've got a question for you, John. You're one of the folks I know that attends many conferences every year, that you're a great sort of in-person networker and marketer. How do you sense that networking strategies are changing here when we're all sort of like right now, we're all in either our houses, or like I'm in our office right now, but there's nobody else in the office. And in-person conferences at this point are going to be few and far between, depending on what state you're at and where they're at in sort of their reopening process. But what are you doing to network in these during the pandemic?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. Dustin, I think that look, LinkedIn has a lot of features that allow you to connect in a very substantive way to form relationships. And I can tell you that a lot of people don't really know how to leverage a lot of the features that LinkedIn really has to offer. So I guess I would really encourage people to investigate that and really learn about all the nuances and all the features that are available to you. Because I'll tell you, Dustin, I spend more time leveraging LinkedIn now than I ever have before, and engaging much more with people. I spend time reading what people have to post to see what they're up to and what's important to them, and then interacting with them, starting with a comment and then connecting, exchanging DMs with them. So You know, I mean, I've done all this before. I've been
Are
doing
you
all this.
seeing, I'm curious though, are you seeing more engagement on LinkedIn? Because I know you've been, a big, big on LinkedIn for years now. Are you seeing more engagement these days?
I would say yes. I would say yes. I see more people taking the time to comment, not just, like people's posts, but actually comment and actually interact with them, which is, I think, it's a really positive thing, because that's what that's what it's there for. That's what it's kind of meant for. And I think that your ability to learn and to learn all of the different features and to really embrace it and use it, I think is so important. So I don't know, that's the first thing that comes to mind, because I mean, look, what are you going to do? You have to you have to get social. You have to embrace social media. You can't create a conference out of thin air, right? A lot of people aren't gonna. There's conference cancellations all over the place. It's become just mind blowing, just totally mind blowing.
Yeah,
So
well,
you
and
have.
even when conferences come back, I think a lot of them are going to be either, 100% virtual or, at least for the time being, sort of maybe a hybrid version of that. And to your point, I mean, there's going to have to still be sort of that virtual or social media esque connection.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, you can't control all of these external things that happen, pandemics and whatever, and floods or anything. You can't control uh, these acts of God, right? But you can control how you react to them, and you need to think. You need to become more innovative. You need to think outside the box and get a little bit out of your typical comfort zone, because guess what, you're not going to be able to go and hang out with the same people that you used to, like in person, at the parties, and at the networking events and everything. You're not going to have an opportunity to do that, so you have to put yourself in a different position, and not just be like, oh well, I there's nothing I can do about it. Well, yes, there is something that you can do about it. You can get better at using social media. You can clean up your profile page. And there's so many articles about how to make your LinkedIn pages more attractive, your company page and your personal profile page, and how to really beef them up. So, yeah, I would say you need to focus on that, and maybe beefing up your Facebook profiles and leveraging Facebook more. So there's so many different things that you can do if you think about it.
Yeah, well, and to your point about Facebook, I mean, I think that goes back to, again, are you a B2C company or a B2B? If you're B2C and you don't have a Facebook page that's really built out and interactive with your customer, then I mean, you're really missing out,
Right. That's absolutely true.
right? So John, question for you. I mean, you're, again, as I mentioned earlier, you're co-chair of our mortgage technology and marketing committee. You've seen, a lot of new and exciting technologies over the last couple of years, and you've been to our Mortgage Innovators Conference, you've been to other trade shows in the industry. What would you say is maybe the number one most innovative technology that you're excited about these days?
Um, you know what? There are certain technologies that I'm really keeping an eye on, from a marketing standpoint, from a CX standpoint, and a UX standpoint. So I here's three of them. Okay, voice search is one. This is important because it plays such an important role now in SEO, and marketers need to focus on the intent of search and then make sure that they have the content to match that. And it's so important because you have to develop content. I always tell our clients and prospects, you have to develop content for each part of the buyer pathway. And a lot of marketers, they get focused on, one part or another part of the pathway, and they develop all of their content in specific areas, but you have to develop for each part of the buyer pathway. So anyway, voice search is very important. Keep an eye on voice search. Another one is chatbots. In the next 5 years, I think that they are going to absolutely explode even further than it is today, because I mean, they're being used big time today, but they come with personalities. They're becoming more intelligent, and they enhance the overall customer experience. So I think chatbots are going to be big. Another one is AI and machine learning. Data analysis is becoming more efficient now, which means that marketers can deliver hyper-personalized messages to their audiences. It's no longer acceptable to just insert somebody's first name in the subject line of an email and a company name somewhere in the body of the email. Personalization includes dynamic content, meaning content that changes according to individual history, past engagement with your brand and individual circumstances. So, as time goes on, more marketers will set up predictive lead scoring and deploy more complex trigger-based campaigns as a result.
That's fascinating. Interesting. All right. Well, I think to find out more about what John's talking about, it goes without saying that you should be, paying attention to our mortgage technology and marketing webinars, which we produce on a monthly basis that John moderates. And we cover a lot of these topics, and we'll continue to cover them throughout the rest of the year and beyond. John, question for you. Right now, obviously, in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of all of the activity going on in our state legislature, with our regulators, with the governor, and then obviously at the federal level with Congress and the administration, there's a lot of attention right now on advocacy efforts within the industry. But as I'm sure you see too, we've seen here, you run into folks in the industry who don't see the value in advocacy or in supporting groups like the California MBA or the National Mortgage Bankers Association. I know you're a big supporter of both, so I'm curious, what would be your sort of elevator pitch to someone, a colleague in the industry that doesn't see the value in those groups or in advocacy work in general?
It's a really big mistake. You have to engage. You know what? I would say that the most important piece of advice that I would give anybody is to become a member and engage. And that's an important statement, engagement, because a lot of people, they join the California MBA, they join a lot of other state organizations, they join the MBA, but they don't actually engage and become actually active from an advocacy standpoint or any other standpoint. So that's the most important piece of advice I could really give. Join committees and actually participate in them, because that participation is recognized by everybody, and it's how people get to know you. When you have that camaraderie, it helps you build critical relationships with industry movers and shakers that can help you and help your career, and will be there for you when you need them as well. But first, they need to know who you are. So again, participate in the committees, go to the networking events when you can, and provide value. Just network and provide value and engage.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And we see that here, I'm sure, and we see that, I would imagine at the National MBA, they see that with many of their members, that they, like you said, they join and then they just don't engage, and they don't see at the end of the year when they get the renewal notice, do they see, did I get value out of this year? And then, you got to ask yourself, what did I put in? And to your point, if you engage with the association, I've yet to meet an association, staff member or leader that didn't say, yes, we don't want you to engage. We want you to kind of, stay hands off. No, they all want you to engage. They all want you. They will all welcome your engagement. So as much as you can put into the association, you will get far more back out, I believe. And I think you've seen that too.
You're absolutely right. That sounds very cliche, but look, you get out exactly what you put in. And think about that statement really, because it sounds cliche, but it is very true.
All right, well, that's all the time we've got today. Hey, I want to thank our two guests today, John and Scott Seroka with Seroka Brand Development. John, the website where folks can find out more about what you guys do?
Seroka.com, Seroka.com.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again, guys, and make sure and subscribe to our channel on either YouTube or Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, and follow us. We'll be doing, again, weekly podcasts all through the month of May here, and then we'll be getting back to monthly podcasts after that. So with that, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.